What is up, everybody? Jim Cirile and Tanya Klein here from Coverage Inc., the leader in screenplay analysis, development, and editing services since 2002. What's up, Tanya?
What's up, Jim?
What's going on? What are we talking about today?
Well, today we are going to talk about how coverage works. Something very basic, but a lot of people don't necessarily know. And actually, a lot of writers want to know. These people are looking at my script. What are they thinking? What are they doing?
Yeah, I think we should probably start with what coverage even is, because there's going to be some people who are looking at this who don't know. I mean, emerging writers don't necessarily know what coverage inc what coverage is. So, what's coverage, Tanya?
Well, coverage means a screenplay analyst looks at your script and writes a coverage report.
Yeah.
Basically, it means they talk about story, structure, dialogue, characters, craft, marketability, and then they assign a score, how the script rates when it comes to all of these sections. And in the end, there is a category for pass, consider with reservations, consider, recommend.
Yeah,
So,
and
Jim, do you want to talk about what these actually mean?
well, yeah, but let's yes, but let's also say why this is important and why people actually use coverage, and that is because, when we are creating something, we generally kind of have blinders on. We don't necessarily know how other people are going to perceive or receive that work. So the purpose of coverage is to give us that independent third party validation. So
And let's also be clear about who those other people are. Basically, the other people are the people we send the script to,
yeah,
because let's face it, you don't write a script to put it in your drawer. You want to send it out to agents, managers, producers, and you want to, well, break into the business. So
right.
you need to know or you need to ensure that you put your best foot forward because you only get one chance to make a first impression and you want to make sure that this is a good first impression because this is a very, very competitive business.
Right. And so, in theory, these people who work for coverage companies know what they're doing. Again, in theory, sometimes that's not true. And but at least in theory, they bring to you that expertise of story, character, dialogue, style, technique, all that stuff, which may help to shore up weaknesses in your writing by pointing out things that maybe you didn't know could use a little bit more TLC.
What does it mean when your script gets a pass, when your script gets a consider, and when your script gets a recommend? So, for example, if you send your script out to a manager, the manager doesn't have time to read. I mean, there's some managers with very small management companies that actually do their own reading,
Right.
but most of the time, they might have an intern or an assistant. Agencies absolutely have that. No agent reads their own stuff. They only read it when somebody says, like their assistant, who's hoping to at some day, at some point get a desk and be an agent as well. So they spend every weekend reading about 50 scripts. So when this person says, recommend, what they're saying is, drop everything right now, whatever you're doing, read this script now. So that is also why nobody will ever give you or any script a recommend, no matter how genius they think it is, because basically it means sticking their neck out. If they tell their boss, okay, drop everything, read this right now, that means if the boss thinks, wow, I did not like this script, I cannot believe I dropped everything to read this turd, they're in trouble.
Yeah, you might be out on your butt. I mean, okay, so all of that is true. Let's backtrack a little bit to kind of explain what these ratings are. So, when you submit a script to an agency or a management company or to a coverage company, for example, they are rated, right? They're in addition to the comments that people will write on the script, there will be a conclusion, and that conclusion is you know, uh, a rating from pass to recommend. Pass is on the lower side, and recommend is on the highest possible side for both script and writer. Okay, so in other words, you could get potentially a consider for script while getting a pass for writer, which means that they like the idea and the concept, but they didn't think that the writing was there. Or you could get, a pass for writer or pass for script, but yeah, consider for writer, which means they really like the writing voice. They thought, the writing talent is good, but for whatever reason, they didn't think the script was good. So, or for them. So this is the way that this goes. Basically, it goes from pass. The next step up is what's called either a soft pass or a low consider. The next one is or consider with reservations. Then above that is what's called a consider. Above that is a strong consider, and above that is a recommend. Excuse me, is a recommend. And like Tanya said, recommends super, super rare. Now, here at Coverage Inc., we try to keep everything real world. So, in other words, our ratings really try to reflect what you are going to see or the response you're going to get if you submit to an industry company. We don't soft pedal the results. We don't engage in puffery to try to get people to resubmit their scripts to us by telling people how wonderful it is when there's significant issues that need to be done. Of course, we'll always try to convey those things to you in a way that is empowering, and not make you feel like crap because you sent the script to us. But our job is to give you a real world analysis, right? So when it comes to the ratings of the scripts, um, here's how it works. Probably 60 to 70% of anything that comes in to an agency or management company or to a coverage company is going to be a pass for both script and for writer. That doesn't mean it's terrible. It just means it's not there yet. There are additional drafts that may be required. And we've certainly talked about this in other videos, right, Tanya, about how many drafts it might take sometimes. Um, but basically, it's like if you get a pass, it's not the end of the world. It doesn't mean you suck. It often just means it's not there yet. Let's, do some more work. Above that, consider with reservations, either for script or for writer. Means you're getting close. You're not in the zone yet, but you're getting close. Keep going. Um, Above that, and that what everybody wants is a consider. Okay. Now, people think that, if they do 4 or 5 drafts, they should get a consider, but that's not generally true. Considers are really, in the real world, only about 2 to 3% of scripts that come into production companies, because that means this is worth a look. This is worth elevating to your boss, to your, to your, the agent whose desk you work at if you're an assistant, or the producer you work for if you're a development executive.
Yeah, and let's be very clear that nobody ever got into trouble for saying no.
Right.
However, saying yes is what gets you into trouble. Because if you say yes and your boss disagrees, or if you say yes and your boss agrees and the thing turns out to be a nightmare, still your fault. So again, yes means they're sticking out their neck, and they will only say yes when they are fairly certain or very certain that this actually is a yes and it won't get them into trouble. So if they have any doubts at all, it won't be a yes. It won't be a consider. It will be a consider with reservations.
Exactly. And that's why those variations exist. Consider with reservations is basically the reader saying, I thought there was something here, but I'm hedging my bets. And that protects them. And that's how the business works. So, if you get a consider with reservations, in particular for script at a production company, it may be elevated to the next level. It may be kicked back to you. It depends on how passionate they are about the material. But a soft consider or consider with reservations, that's kind of where you want to be, because it tells you, you're above the target. You're somewhere above the target. You're getting close. A little bit more TLC will get you there. Um,
Exactly. Let's also go through who ideally should be the people looking at your script. Okay, so I'm gonna try to say that in a way that won't get me into trouble. Okay, so here's the thing. No matter where you send, if you send your script out for coverage, or even, to contests that offer coverage, or film festivals that offer coverage, make sure you do your research. And what I mean by that is make sure that the people who are looking at your script actually know the difference between shit and shinola. Because here's the thing, a lot of people don't necessarily do know that difference. And like, for example, there is a very, very famous festival that I won't mention.
Yeah.
Uh,
I know exactly which one you're talking about.
yeah. So there's a very famous festival that I won't mention and that the industry actually pays attention to.
Yeah.
And you know who looks at your script if you send it to them? Unpaid college interns who have no clue between shit and shinola.
Right.
So, I mean, worthless, in other words.
Yeah.
Um, and also, I mean, so again, be sure to do your research. For example, if you send it to a coverage company, or a story analyst, make sure you look at their, if it's a coverage company, at their readers. Who are these people? What is their background? What is their experience? Or a story analyst, what is their resume? Or do they, does it look like, from looking at their resume, that they actually do know what they're talking about? Because here's the thing. So there's several ways that you can get screwed up with, sending your script out for coverage. There are some people who will just say, "Hey, bravo! That was so fantastic! Bravo, bravo, bravo!" And you know why they're doing that? They're doing that because if they stroke your ego, you're going to come back to them
Yeah.
and keep giving them money.
I
Okay, that's
like
great.
that reader. I
Yes,
like this company. They were nice to me.
exactly. The
Yeah.
problem is, not only does it not do you any good because your script isn't going to progress and you're not going to progress as a writer, it can also really backfire for your career because they gave you the hey, 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 bravo, bravo, bravo. You end up sending out your script thinking it's actually yay, fantastic. And then, you keep sending it out, you keep sending it out, you send it out wide, you send it out to people who have said, sure, send me something when you have something, and then you never hear from them again. Fantastic. You just closed several doors, and now several people think that you don't know what the fuck you're doing. So be careful. And of course,
Okay, hang on. There's a couple of things you said here that I need to jump in on. The first is when you said do your research. Look, a lot of people, a lot of writers, they can and will do their research, and still they can't necessarily know the truth just from what the companies, or the contests or the festivals put out. If you do your research into such and such festival that we were just talking about that we're not going to name, you are going to find that this is a very highly regarded festival that is attended by industry, and you know it's a taste maker. So of course you're going to get the impression this is legit. This is where I need to submit, and that's why they get thousands, tens of thousands of submissions every year. There's no way for people to know the truth of who's reading their scripts. Okay. Same thing with coverage companies. Look, I mean, there's a lot of good readers out there, and there's a lot of terrible readers out there. And when we review readers to possibly bring aboard here at Coverage Inc., oftentimes we look at people who've worked for other coverage companies, and when we test them, they don't pass. 90% of the people who apply to work at Coverage Inc., who've worked at other coverage companies, do not pass. They do not pass our rigorous gauntlet that we put them through. Now, maybe that's a little bit of blowing our own horn, but it just goes back to the point of, it's really hard for the average person to tell. So do your research, yes, but there's also going to be a certain amount of trial and error and just getting your butt kicked. There's really no way to avoid that. But one other point I want to add onto the festival coverage thing, since our topic is, how coverage works, right? When you submit to a contest or festival, they will often give you the upsell option to add on coverage, right? And it's usually a reasonable extra fee, $50 or something like that. And you're like, okay, well, I'm already paying 75 or whatever it is to enter this contest. I might as well spend another 50 and get the reader's notes. It seems reasonable, right? But the thing is, like Tanya said before, you don't know who these people are. You don't know if they have any bona fides at all. There's quite a few contests out there, legitimate contests who've been around for decades that use interns or unqualified readers, and these people don't know what they're doing. You literally don't know what you're going to get. Sometimes they pay their readers $7 a script. And the only way these readers can make any money is if they churn through 4 scripts in an hour. So they read the first 10 pages and then they write up a couple paragraphs based on the first 10 pages that they've read, or maybe they read the first 10 and the last 5. This is all legit stuff that goes on, right? So what you're getting when you pay for those upgrades is 99% of the time not worth the money. So I would strongly encourage everybody watching this, don't waste your money. If you want to enter the contest, go for it. Enter the festival, go for it. That's great. But any coverage that you get back, it may not have any value, or even worse, it might send you off in the wrong direction with bad notes. We've seen this happen before where our clients come back to us and they say, well, so and so coverage I got told me to do this. So I did that and I rewrote Act Two and I did all this. And we're like, oh. So
So
that's
basically, speaking of trial and error, how should you judge your coverage? Well, it's not about, ooh, they stroked my ego. It's not about that. What it is about is you read the coverage. First of all, does it show you what the problems are, why these are problems, where the problems are, and does it suggest possible fixes?
yeah.
So that's, and most of all, does it make your script better and does it make you a better writer? In other words, are you seeing things now that you did not see previously? So those are all metrics you should use. And it's also, again, even if you don't agree with every note, that's fine.
Yeah.
But, look at it and go, this makes me think. Oh, I hadn't thought of that. This clicks. This makes sense.
There's a lot of notes that, I mean, we've seen it with our own scripts, Tanya, where, you and I sit down with the coverage and the red pen and we go through it line by line and we discuss every note. And in particular, the notes we don't agree with, we always give a fair hearing to. We always discuss them and we go, all right, even if we don't agree with this note, is there anything here that, that might have sparked that note, even if we don't agree with it?
Yeah.
It's like, so what's going on? Why would this reader have said something? And then, so oftentimes we kind of find the note under the note, but you have to be receptive to the process, even if you wind up discarding it and going, nah, the reader didn't know what they were talking about. That's perfectly fine. That's your choice. But it's important to kind of understand when you get coverage back, please be receptive to constructive criticism. That's the purpose of coverage in the first place.
Yeah, and I mean, a good way of handling that is you get the coverage back, read it, put it aside for a week, and then read it again.
Yeah. Yeah. We've all got egos and, we all are going to respond negatively. It's hard not to. I mean, unless that coverage comes back and it's like, this was fantastic. The writer is the greatest thing since sliced bread. Hey, look, that's what we all want, right? I mean, it feels good when people give you compliments, and that's wonderful. But is that in your best interest necessarily? You know,
Yeah.
you know.
So
So,
also, let's quickly talk about who analysts are. I mean, who are these people that are called screenplay analysts?
hmm, okay,
So ideally, they are development executives,
Yeah.
Actually, we have quite a few of those. So that's what they do all day long. They develop scripts for production companies.
And these
Or,
crazy people read for us on the side because they don't have enough to read in their regular day jobs.
yes, they're writers, of course.
Yeah.
So, for example, we have several people that are actively working on TV shows. So we get them when they're on hiatus and hoping to be picked up.
Yeah. Yeah, hey, you do what you got to do to pay the bills, you know. So yeah, development assistants, you know, people. Look, there's a lot of great assistants who work at production companies, whose job it is to read scripts. You know, you do that for a year or two. Trust me, it is the trial by fire. You learn a lot about story from doing that.
Yeah, we also have readers for that work for studios, agencies.
Yeah, exactly. So these are the people with tangible industry experience who you really want reading your script. You know, look, if someone's just out of film school, yeah, and they've learned the form, that's fine. But you know, it's that sort of on the ground experience working at an actual company that's really key to what we look for here at Coverage Inc. You know, if you're great with story and you just kind of, you know, have those innate skills, that's only half the battle. The other half of the battle is knowing what the industry is looking for, and that means Hollywood as well as indie. You know, there are different things, but there's a lot of overlap also. Basically, it's like, is this script going to be marketable to whatever place it needs to go? You know, the best readers will be able to hone in on that. It does take a little bit of experience though to learn that stuff.
Yeah, so we have very stringent criteria of who works for us. I mean, you have to have a certain amount of years of industry experience. You have to have a degree. You have to, well, pass our test and our test coverage, which is where a lot of them fail.
Yeah, there's multiple steps. There's a markup test. There's a quiz within the quiz. There's a taste quiz that we don't tell people is actually that they're graded on, but they are, you know, to make sure that they're not just believing the hype about projects and can actually form their own opinions. So all of that stuff is important.
Exactly. So to summarize, what should coverage do? Coverage should help you make your script better, and coverage should help you become a better writer. So that's really what it comes down to. Coverage is a tool, and a tool that you should use. And if it's from us or from somebody else or from a writers group or from a trusted screenwriting teacher, doesn't matter. But it is a tool that you should avail yourself of.
Right. And one other thing that I want to clarify, which is there is a difference between internal coverage and coverage that you will get from using a service like Coverage Inc. or, you know, if you submit your script to a contest or a festival. Okay. Internal coverage is not intended to be seen by the writer. It's within the production company, it's within the agency, it's within the management company. Every script that goes into every company gets covered, and that coverage goes into their database. So it's on file there and it lives forever. So they can always pull it up, even if you know, 4 years later you send in a new draft. You know, they'll go, oh yeah, we saw this back in, you know, 2022. Um, you know, so that coverage, that internal coverage is going to generally be brutal. Okay. There's a lot of people who work, who are very talented people who work for these companies who they have no filter. They just tell it how it is, often, you know, I mean, basically the idea is, should I elevate this to my boss or not? And if not, why not? And it's like, bad, 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 no good at all, terrible. There's no suggestions for improvement. It's just these are all the flaws in the script. These are the pros in the script. Is it worth elevating or not? That's what it's all about. Okay. Whereas coverage that, for example, Coverage Inc. provides to clients, it's not about that. It's sure we'll point out those things, but it's much more about empowering you to fix it by giving you some creative ideas. So you're not, if you see internal coverage on your script from an agency or management company, and by the way, they will never show you that, but occasionally it will leak out and you'll see it and you go, oh my God, how did they ever sign me as a client? Like I've literally seen this. I'm like, this was pass. And you sent my script out to 30 producers? Like, they don't want you to see that stuff. Okay. But it's true. So big difference between those two things. Okay. So coverage, depending on where you get it or who it's for, could be a completely different thing. But that also means that sometimes those people who have that incredible industry experience and have worked for a production company for 5 or 10 years in development, they can't work for a company like Coverage Inc. because they don't know how to present a note in an empowering way. They're just too harsh. And unfortunately, we've had to let a few of those people go over the years.
Yeah.
But so just be aware that there are multiple flavors of coverage out there. You know, if you submit to a contest, you might get back a page and it's probably going to be worthless. If you submit to a coverage company, you're probably going to get back 4 to 6 or 8 or maybe 10 pages, depending on the level of service that you submit to. And in theory, it will help you elevate your material.
Excellent. And
And
again,
that's it.
if you have any questions about coverage, you know where to find us. info@coverageinc.com.
Thanks for watching, everybody. Hope we answered a couple of your questions. And please hit that subscribe button. We are trying to grow our channel. Hit the like button if you like this video. And if you know anybody who you think might get something out of it, feel free to share it. Thanks for spending a couple of minutes with us. We appreciate you.
Bye.
Peace out.